Now, in diplomacy, it's widely believed that if you're not on the table, then you're probably on the menu. And that seems to be the fate for China at this year's G20 Summit.
Exactly. China is definitely, I think, extremely salty about what has happened regarding the multilateral reforms, which definitely will be countering the BRI. And it goes without saying, 5 days before D-Day, Xi Jinping announced he will be skipping the meeting. And I honestly don't think anybody was really too surprised about the fact that Xi Jinping did not want to be present here during the G20 Summit. Xi Jinping essentially has avoided multilateral fora where China doesn't get to have their way. Now, the meeting, Premier Li Qiang will be taking his place, but there's more than what meets the eye here.
Now, Xi's absence is going to be the most telling at the summit, much more than Russia's Vladimir Putin not attending the summit. This will become the second time the Chinese president is going to miss the G20 summit. Last time it was the COVID-19 pandemic, but this time the foreign minister has not given any reason. So what is keeping Xi Jinping so busy? Well, he's visiting areas worst affected by floods.
Yeah, he is reaching out to areas in China which are affected by floods. I think this is something that should have been done long ago, but he is doing that right now as the G20 summit is on in New Delhi. Parts of China faced record rainfall, flooding cities and farmlands. But this happened in July and August. And Xi Jinping did not make any visits until this weekend when the G20 summit is on and where he was expected to be. Now, there's also a lot of diplomacy on Xi's schedule. Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro is in China for a 7-day trip. After this, Xi will be hosting Zambian president from September 10th to 16th.
So is this Xi Jinping sending out a message about his priorities? Well, a Nikkei Asia report suggests there's more to it. A precursor seems to have been this summer's Badajoz meeting. It's an annual get-together of incumbent and retired leaders of the Chinese Communist Party. And reportedly, in this meeting, party elders reprimanded the top leader in ways they had not until now. From politics to economy, Xi Jinping was pulled up for everything.
Now, China today is not in the best shape. Its economy is struggling. The real estate sector is in shambles. The youth unemployment rate deteriorated to such an extent that Beijing stopped releasing figures itself. And geopolitical climate is not particularly in China's favor.
So even though many are seeing Xi's no-show as a snub to India's G20 presidency, the decision is more to do with Beijing than New Delhi. Foreign affairs experts say the move has dented Xi's own image as a statesman and denied himself an important multilateral platform. G20, it's considered the world's biggest economic forum. It makes up 60% of the world's population, 80% of the global GDP, and 75% of global trade. So the absence of the leader of the world's second largest economy speaks volumes.
All right, for more insights on this, we're being joined by Dr. Shrikant Gondapalli. He is the Dean of School of International Studies and Professor of China Studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Welcome to the broadcast, sir.
Thank you.
So, the no-shows at the G20, that has become a topic of discussion, great discussion and speculation. What is your take on Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin not participating at the G20? How do you feel it's going to shape the talks here or the agenda here going forward?
Thank you. As you rightly mentioned, there are economic issues that Xi is trying to tackle. The Asian Nikkei mentioned about the hauling up of the Chinese president by the party elders, specifically former Vice President Tsang Ching-hung, who was actually responsible for Xi's promotion in 2012 as the General Secretary of the party. And so his mentor was criticizing, according to this report. Having said that, as you mentioned, President Putin has not been attending this meeting, which basically means that flowing from Bali summit meeting, where China and Russia cobbled up together against the 18 other countries, position on Ukraine crisis. It is likely that if Xi Jinping were to attend this meeting, he would have been isolated in the absence of President Putin, who mentioned to Prime Minister Modi on August 28th that he would not be attending the meeting for various reasons. Which means then Xi Jinping would have been isolated in the international domain, and that is problematic for the Chinese foreign policy. China has been saying they are not responsible for the Ukrainian conflict, it is Russia. Nevertheless, they have a limitless partnership with the Russians since February last year. Right. And so there is that concern there, sensitivity there. The Chinese would have been arraigned against 18 other countries. And this is, so Premier Li Qiang's presence, he is basically a management expert, economy expert, and as part of the head of the State Council, he looks after the economic issues. Right. And G20 is mainly in terms of the economic issues and globalization, the trade related. China is the largest trading country in the world. As you mentioned just now, the 75% of trade is with the G20 countries. And among these, China is the largest in terms of trade. So Li Qiang's brief is basically on looking at the trade-related matters, smoothing up. Secondly, in terms of economic growth rates, China had fallen up to 3.3%. They maintained an average of 7.7% between 2000 to 2010. During the pre-Xi Jinping era, and when Xi Jinping took over, they have declined in terms of economic growth rates. So Li Qiang's brief is how to maintain these growth rates, which is, of course, a Herculean task, as you mentioned just now, in terms of unemployment, real estate,
I just have to take from what you mentioned earlier regarding, the way India has come forward for the developing nations, and how, if you can talk to us about how the African Union is going to be included and what kind of step India has taken, what it means, and what kind of a trend it's going to set for G20 going forward, what kind of efforts that India has made is going to shape how G20 moves forward from here.
I think that is a very important topic, because China has been sporting that it is a leader of the global South. And India's efforts since January this year, when Prime Minister Modi organized the meeting of nearly 120 countries, and asking them what is their priorities.
Even inviting them to the G20. It's actions louder than words when it comes to India, more than China here.
So he asked several countries what are their concerns, and the bottom line that was expressed in this meeting in January was on energy prices increase, food prices increase, fertilizer prices increase, which did affect a number of developing countries, specifically food and energy security aspects. That really pinched their GDP. And so this is the bottom line, and this is what India had been raising for the past 9 months about the energy security aspects and also food security. The concern here is the fallout of the Ukraine war rather than Ukraine itself. And this has been clarified by Dr. Jaishankar, the foreign minister. And this has been the main thrust area in the recent times. Of course, some more aspects have been added, such as digitalization of the platforms, and in which India made huge strides on Jan Dhan, on UPI, on a number of other digitalization aspects of currency, trade, and other. We have also had the Supply Chain Resilience Initiative Act 2 years ago between Japan, Australia, and India. And how do we restore the supply chain mechanism, in which China failed due to the COVID-19 and other, which originated in Wuhan. And this suggests that India is actually making some alternative long-term measures, such as how do we protect the global South from these vagaries of economic disruptions, technological as well as the energy and other related problems.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Shrikant Kondapalli, thank you so much for joining us on WION or with your perspective on this. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.